Hi, everyone, and thanks for being with me. I want to talk about a subject which I've talked about before, but I just want to talk about again because the instances in which this problem is occurring is happening exponentially more and more. And that is about women and children who are being killed by their partners. And this has come to a highlight because I listened to a program on the ABC that talked about bystander syndrome or effect. I don't know which word you would use, but either way, it gets the message across. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. I'll talk about a story that a woman told in that episode. But I'm talking about this now because two things. Number one, the statistics have come out now whereby it used to be one woman per week was being killed by their partner. It's now one in every 4 days a woman is being killed by her partner. And the question continually arises, what should we be doing about this terrible, traumatic problem? Because not only is it the loss of an individual who had much of their life ahead of them, but it's also about the loss that the children would have in relation to having a mother, having a family, and so on. So many people, there are cousins, there are parents, obviously, there are other siblings, there are a whole range of people who are affected by that one death. And the point really remains that any death through domestic violence or in any circumstance for that matter, is horrible and is something that we should be thinking about and we should be dealing with, particularly when it comes to domestic violence. So first, I'm going to highlight the second thing that occurred that made me start to think about this a little bit more. Not that it's far from my mind; it's something I'm often thinking about. But and that was over the weekend. Three children were found dead after a house fire in Sydney's West, and this is being treated as a domestic violence incident. A fire which killed three young children in a house at Laylaw Park in Sydney's West is being treated as a domestic violence incident. Fire crews were called to the scene just before 1 a.m. on Sunday. Police said two boys, aged 3 and 6, were treated by paramedics and taken to Westmead Hospital in a critical condition, but died a short time later. And police allege a 28-year-old man who is now in custody tried to stop police. This is horrific. I can't even describe my feelings in relation to this man. Hatred, I guess, sits at the top of that list, but a despicable behaviour whereby this 28-year-old man who's now in custody, who is alive, regretfully, tried to stop police and other emergency services from rescuing the children from the burning home. A quote, "I can confirm during police attempts to get into a property, those efforts were frustrated by a male inside." The New South Wales Police Acting Superintendent Jason Pietrowski told. The man arrested is the father of the children who died and was under police guard in hospital. He was in an induced coma and being treated for burns and smoke inhalation. The mother, as well as three boys aged 4, 7 and 11 and a 9-year-old girl, were also taken to hospital where expected to recover. So this is, again, another horrific example where, for whatever reason, this guy thought that he had control over the relationship, which clearly had gone sour, and that if he couldn't have, and I've heard these stories many, many times working as a therapist, whereby the male decides that because he can't have the children, then neither can anybody else, including the wife. And so normally men take extreme measures to get children through the family court, another issue for another time, or they choose to take the lives of the children and their own. In this case, this guy survives this for whatever reason, We don't know the full story just yet. But I want to talk to you about bystander syndrome. Now, all of us, have cases, I shouldn't say all of us, most of us have probably cases where we've been talking to a mate and the mate will say to us things which indicate to us, if we're listening, and often the problem is we're not listening, but if we're listening, we will realise that the behaviour of this person is controlling. And one of the most obvious indicators of controlling behaviour is language which denigrates their partner. So the way they talk about them generally, they talk about the way they dress, they talk about them not being compliant, not being agreeable. The other thing you can look for often too is how often does the partner get invited to events where there's you and your partner. And if you're related to someone who just seems to be disappearing, this is you're related to the woman, and the woman seems to be disappearing off the scene, and you can't hear from her, and there's often excuses as to why she can't attend family functions, and you notice this rift occurring between you and her, and she becomes very protective also of her partner, then there's a good chance that that person is being abused. Now, when we're being told directly by a guy that basically he is controlling and he's trying to gaslight you around his partner, then that is a time when we could step in and correct him. We could tell him we don't stand for it, we don't like it, we're not going to be a party to it, and that we don't believe him, and that therefore the relationship that he has with you will be severed. Now, for some guys, they won't want that. For a lot of other guys, they say, fine, don't want you in my life, don't need you in my life because I've got this woman in my life, she's everything to me, and I don't really give a shit about you. But then what you could do is just check on the partner and find out where she's at and find ways to step in. Now, I believe today, given the degree of domestic violence that there is, that if you have a situation where you believe someone is being harmed, you should contact the police and ask them to intervene and say, even if you're going to go around to that house, ask for the police to be present for breach of peace so that they can keep an eye on whatever happens if you choose to confront this guy. But under all circumstances, we should be working to ensure that the woman and her children are safe, because if not, things like just what happened recently in New South Wales and what's happening in one person every 4 days is going to continue to occur. There's lots we can do, but most of the time, regretfully, we're bystanders. We sit back not wanting to get involved because it's a family matter and we should not get involved in family issues. And the other excuse we often use is we don't have enough information. But sometimes our instincts tell us what is happening between these two people. And we should do whatever it is that we can in order to intervene. Also, if you're aware where children are being harmed, where you notice some children that might come into your care because your kids are playing together, whatever, and you notice that a child is being hurt or they have bruises that are unaccountable, or the excuse offered for those bruises is not valid in your view, then you could contact the police or Department of Child Protection and have them at least make a report and have them investigate. The problem, I think, is that we choose to do nothing most of the time. Now, if we choose to do something, we may be able to intervene. We may not, because we know that often women get trapped into this relationship and their sense of self is so devalued that they often think that no one will listen to them, no one will believe them, and if I leave him, I myself will be harmed or my children will be harmed. Which brings me to the podcast on ABC Listen app, where this woman was jailed for 17 years for killing her husband. Now, The situation was that for 2 years she was abused, physically, sexually in particular, and emotionally and psychologically she was pretty damaged. But it got to a point whereby she had left. He asked her to come back. So this is the other thing, come back and have a conversation with me. I don't know how many times I've heard that either. And don't come back and have that conversation. Make the decision to leave and friggin' leave, I reckon. But often women feel, well, maybe he will change. I see some good in him, some people will say, and that hopefully he will change. Now, often women get sucked into that and they come back, and in her case, she did. And when she came back, he asked her to come out he held her and hugged her and did all the right things and said he won't do it again. Then he took her straight after that into the shed. And in the shed, he had a plastic piece of, a plastic cloth. No such thing as a plastic cloth. He had this plastic thing laid out on the ground. And he says to her, if you don't come and stay with me from now on, I will go around to your parents' place and I will kill them, and I will also kill your siblings as well. And then I'll bring them back here and I'll cut them all up and I'll kill you, and then I'll kill myself. And I've got this plastic laid out so that when the police arrive, there won't be much blood everywhere, which I thought was very thoughtful of him. So as a result of that, she became extremely suicidal, as you may well imagine. Thought life wasn't worth living. She attempted to kill herself. He interrupted while she had the gun. He had guns, apparently, and a lot of them. Another story about how he would use those to intimidate her. And then during a tussle, she shot him. Now, she should never have been jailed for 17 years. I don't know the full story, I will admit, but 17 years seems very harsh when you're in a situation where your life is threatened in the way that it was by him. But what she also says, which I think is really important, she holds close to someone who did ask her at one point if she was okay, because they sensed that something was wrong. And there was this one person who seemed to notice that things were not the way that they should have been. Which brings me to my final point, is that women who are in DV relationships change dramatically over time. So that bubbly, effervescent party goer now becomes, you notice them retreating from the things that they used to enjoy. They become quiet and subdued. They become a different person to the one that you may have known to start with. And if you notice those changes in somebody, then you need to inquire why. And if they have a partner, you need to keep a close eye on how that relationship is developing over time. But my point is that we sit back as bystanders. Many of us see those things happening and we fail to correct them. Fail in particularly to find out how the woman is being treated by their partner. If more of us did that, and if more of us became more educated about looking for the signs in all of this, we would save, without doubt, we would save lives. So I want you just all to think about that, if you would, and let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've come across people like that, if you have intervened and what has happened, or if you've got any other ideas that you think would be helpful. So please subscribe to my channel, ring the bell for further notifications, and just generally let me know what you think. In the meantime, take care, and particularly given what I've just said, look after yourself and be safe.